We know sports.
The Couturier, he scores! Just don't quit by the fire.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Another Thursday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Yes, it's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on video at 973 ESPN on YouTube and Twitter. Glad to have you guys on board the show today. Still coming up on the show, Andy McNamara for our weekly conversation about the NFL. Week 10 is this week. Starts tonight with coverage of Ravens and Dolphins. You can hear the action following Sixers basketball right here on 97.3 ESPN. We got some Eagles news. We got some Sixers news. I'll keep you updated as the day progresses, but it's starting to look like there's a possibility the Sixers will at least have a few guys back tonight. So I know that Seth Curry is a game time decision. Okay. He is currently warming up. I'm seeing video online before the game. According to Doc Rivers, he told the media that they'll see how Seth Curry feels. So we will find out about the Sixers. I'll keep you updated as they will play top of the hour, 7 p.m. versus the Raptors right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'll also get into some Eagles news, and I got to address something that's going on with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. And I understand that it's a topic that's going to be a little controversial, so I'm giving it to you guys right now. The text board is 609-403-0973. You can DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app as always, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. I understand that some of you out there who are going to agree with me, some of you who are going to disagree with me. So whatever your position is, let me know. I'm willing to have the conversation about it. But before we get to the Eagles and Sixers stuff, I do want to say at the beginning of the show, it is Veterans Day. Thank you to everyone who has served. People like me don't get to do what we do without the sacrifices made by people for this country. Okay? You know, people like one of my good friends from high school, my brother Nick Purcell, who is in the Army, or people like my grandfather, Fred Danifo, who was in the Marines. You know, people like those people are the reason why we get to love and enjoy the sports as much as we do. So thank you to each and every person who has served in the military, currently serving in the military. Thank all of you on this Veterans Day, because we wouldn't be able to have the conversations that we do or do the things that we do if it wasn't for you. So first and foremost, thank all of you. Now, I got to get to this Eagles stuff because the report came out yesterday initially, and it was further clarified today about Howie Roseman being one of the general managers in attendance at the Pittsburgh versus UNC game. And I got to tell you guys, I am not a fan of this situation, okay? Now, here's the official report that came out earlier today by Chris Mortensen. Chris Mortensen said that there will be 30-plus scouts in attendance for today's game, including at least 5 NFL general managers. Kevin Colbert of the Steelers, Mike Mayock from the Raiders, George Patton from the Broncos, Howie Roseman from the Eagles, and Rick Spielman from the Vikings. Now, I will preface this by saying that Pickett and Howe are not the only GMs at this game. All right? I understand that there are other prospects going to be in this game. So I am not going to sit here and assume that everyone who's there is only to see those two guys. But obviously the headline is going to say that. So we're going to rock and roll with it unless we're told otherwise. Kevin Colbert of the Steelers makes sense. It's in his own backyard, right? Ben Roethlisberger, he's basically almost done with his career. George Patton makes sense with the Broncos. Teddy Bridgewater is a stopgap quarterback, and Patton did not draft Drew Lock. That was John Elway, and Elway is slowly phasing himself out of football operations. He wants to be more of kind of like an overall operations guy, not just a football guy. And Rick Spielman, you can't blame the guy for wanting to figure out his quarterback situation, considering that since Teddy Bridgewater ripped up his knee, they've been through Sam Bradford, Case Keenum. They've got Kirk Cousins now. They've had so many guys just rolling through that organization. So, for them to look at maybe who the future is at quarterback, it's not a bad idea. Mike Mayock, it's a little questionable, but there's a part of me that wonders, is Mayock there just to do due diligence? And I think that's what Howie Roseman is there doing. I don't think Howie is going to watch Pickett and Howell because he thinks Hurts is a bum. But I do think there is something to be said for the fact that this only fuels the negativity when it comes to a guy like Jalen Hurts. There is a contingent of people out there that no matter what you tell them, they don't like Jalen Hurts. They say there's nothing special about him. They say that he does not have the tools to be a great quarterback. And they'll also go on to say they think he's a backup quarterback, so on and so forth. And I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things about the young quarterback. But here's my counter to that. First of all, Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell are not that special either. I've watched Kenny Pickett now for 4 years at Pitt. I can tell you right now, and my eyes don't lie to me very often, all right? I've been wrong about 3 quarterbacks in my lifetime. 3. And that's it. I'm not saying to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying I see things sometimes. I was wrong about Josh Rosen. I was wrong about Cade McNown. If you don't remember Cade McNown, go back to the 99 draft. I was wrong about those 2 guys. I was wrong about Cam Newton. I never thought Cam Newton would win an MVP. I thought he'd be a solid, good quarterback, not an MVP winner. And he won an MVP. So I was wrong about him. I thought Rosen would be good. I was wrong about him. I thought Cade McNown would be pretty good. I was wrong about him. Otherwise, I understand quarterbacks. And I'm going to look at it from a defensive player's eyes. That was my side of the field. So I don't look at quarterback through a quarterback's eyes. I look at it through a defender's eyes. And through that set of eyes, Kenny Pickett has physical ability. He has quote-unquote prototype size. 6'3", 220. But I'm not that impressed. And I'm also not impressed with Sam Howell. If I had to make the analogy, Sam Howell reminds me a lot of Sam Darnold. Not just because their names are Sam, but Darnold and Howell had the same thing happen to them. When certain players graduated and left their schools, they both regressed. To me, that's a red flag. If you are a first-round, high-level prospect, you can't have serious regression and turnover issues the moment you lose a couple players. Pickett is an ascending guy, and I think that at best, I think his potential is a poor man's Joe Burrow. At his best. So you're going to tell me that you're going to want one of those guys over Jalen Hurts. I contend there's only 2 quarterbacks who I really, really, really like in this draft class. It's Malik Willis from Liberty, and it's Matt Corral from Ole Miss. I think Matt Corral can be a better version of Baker Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield was drafted number 1 overall. So if Corral goes in the top 3, I wouldn't be surprised. Malik Willis to me is a combination in terms of physical tools and potential. To me, he's a combination of Donovan McNabb and Deshaun Watson. I think he's phenomenally talented, but I think he's going to need a couple of years to develop. So unless you're drafting someone who's better than what I just described, why would you give up on Jalen Hurts? Don't undersell the fact that Jalen Hurts is followed and respected and revered by the men in the Eagles locker room. The Eagles locker room values him. They believe in him. Whether you like it or not, the reality is the players look to him. They trust in him. Jalen Hurts is still about 5 years away from his prime, in my opinion. Most quarterbacks don't get to their best version of themselves until the ages of 27 to 32. Jalen Hurts is not there. So I'm not going to judge him in any way overtly until I see more of him than beyond what? 10 games, 12 games, 14 games? I can't do it. I see qualities, intangibles in him that win you football games. These are intangibles I don't see from Sam Howell. They're intangibles I honestly don't even see from Matt Corral for as talented as he is. So if you're going to bail on Jalen Hurts for one of these quarterbacks in this draft class, you better be sure, I mean really sure, that they're going to be special. Because when I look at Kenny Pickett, when I look at Sam Howell, and when I look at Matt Corral, and when I look at these quarterbacks, I see good. I don't see great. Can they become great? Sure they can. But if you're okay with getting Baker Mayfield or Kirk Cousins or a lesser version of Joe Burrow or someone like that to replace Jalen Hurts, I guess your idea of football is different than mine. Because if I have the potential of having a top 15 quarterback, why would I invest my resources in a quarterback? This team needs help on defense. This team needs help at numerous positions that are not the quarterback. If for 1 minute you're going to tell me that the Eagles are 3-5 because of the quarterback, then you and I are watching two different football games. Let me ask you a question. Do you really think that there are that many quarterbacks who would have won more games for the Eagles this year than Jalen Hurts? Unless their names are Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, who else out there would have done a better job this year? And don't tell me Deshaun Watson, because there's obviously a ton of reasons why nobody's traded for that guy. Patrick Mahomes. Yep. That's 4 guys. Who else? Dak Prescott? Okay, I'll give you that. There's 5 guys. Kyler Murray? I don't know. Cardinals won without him last week. It looked pretty darn good. I think Kyler Murray is no more advanced at this point as a quarterback than many of his counterparts at his age. Matthew Stafford, I think the jury's still out. Jimmy G, that's a joke. Derek Carr, probably not. Kirk Cousins, that's funny. Jared Goff, absolutely not. Justin Fields isn't developed enough. I can keep going on the list. The point is that I would say there's 5 out of 32 quarterbacks starting in this league who would have done a better job so far this year than Jalen Hurts. But if you want to sacrifice for somebody who's just like the rest of the league, then you and I look at the quarterback position very differently. We'll get to your guys' thoughts, the comments a little bit later in the show. Text board is 609-403-0973 is the text board. We're also live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN, and priority messaging into the show. thanks to the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We'll break down the full NFL Week 10 slate as well as the starts and sits for fantasy football with Andy McNamara from Sportsnet on the other side. By the way, Texter, the NOS beat you heard earlier was, make sure I got the right title here, NY State of Mind. That was the NOS beat we were playing earlier for the texter who asked. All right, Josh Hennig here. Game Night, 97.3 ESPN. More football talk. Andy McNamara from Sportsnet next.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
And now Milt for three, and it's good. Shake Milt now with 6 in a row.
The Sixers host the Raptors. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey.
To the leg, had a jam.
97.3 ESPN.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Thursday night's Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We always dig deeper into the NFL schedule. Fantasy football starts and sits as we do each and every week with the one and only Andy McNamara from Sportsnet. Our conversation of fantasy football talk on Thursdays being brought to you by Jim Malamut at Green Tree Mortgage. Your best play to refinance today. 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And, of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN, where you can see the one and only Andy McNamara joins us right now here on 97.3 ESPN. Andy, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, maybe not as good as you are. I mean, your Browns won, OBJ's out of your hair. You know, it's a good week for you.
So good. Josh, I thought OBJ leaving was going to be the end. I thought Baker Mayfield couldn't throw the football. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it was exactly how we thought it would go. You remove the distraction, and that's what you get. The only bad thing is I'm a Matt Stafford owner in one of my fantasy leagues. I'm getting a little nervous. OBJ coming to town. This guy was complaining about not getting the ball thrown to him before. There's a little guy called Cooper Kupp, catches a lot of footballs. Robert Woods, too. You got Van Jefferson. Where is Odell Beckham Jr. going to be getting the football in Los Angeles is my question.
Well, here's the thing. That's where we should start then. What do you do if you are a Rams fantasy owner, if you're an OBJ owner? Because let's be realistic. You know, we haven't heard from OBJ himself for weeks now? So
we heard from his daddy. But not
we heard from his dad. It's like LeVar Ball. Right? Yeah. You know, so it's like, I don't know what to believe. There are some reports out there that say that OBJ doesn't care about the touches as long as the team is winning. Some other people say that OBJ wanted to go to a team where he would get touches, which honestly, if that was the case, he should have gone to the Saints. So I don't know what to make of this, except for the fact that I guess he just wants to be in a big city. He just wants to be in where the spotlight is, where Hollywood is.
Yeah, wants to be with the stars, and you know what? He can go out to premieres and all that. That's fine. He goes from New York to LA. That's fine for the OBJ brand. I just maintain what we said last week, Josh. I don't believe in any way, shape, or form on any consistent basis Odell Beckham Jr. has any fantasy value. And he hasn't for 4 years. Not like this guy's been balling out. He hasn't. The injuries keep mounting. The burst is gone. That was noted from the practice field from Cleveland reporters I trust, Josh. They said the burst is not there. He cannot get offline. He's fast once he gets going, but not that initial zip, zip, boom, get around your guy and you're open. You know why he was double teamed? Because he didn't have to burst off the line anymore. If me or you are running routes, guess what? We'd be double teamed. Probably don't need anyone to cover us, but it's not there. So my question to any fantasy owner, and I've gotten the questions on Twitter, is of what do you do with OBJ? If you thought he wasn't getting the ball in Cleveland, he definitely ain't getting the ball in LA. Like, this is going to be one of those situations. I feel sort of like in the Deshaun Jackson role. He'll go 4 weeks with 0 points, and he'll have one 90-yard catch, and then people will freak out. That's all.
Yeah, I haven't been a fan of his for a while.
No.
Not because I hate the guy or anything, but because of the fact I just don't think that he's worth the hype anymore.
No, Josh, he's not worth the hype because he hasn't done it. He hasn't done it. If you have the attitude, the prima donna, you go back like Terrell Owens. Guy was a psychological nightmare. They caught a lot of touchdowns, so you put up with it. Ocho Cinco as well. Guy was a handful, scored a lot of touchdowns, got a lot of yards. Odell, because of his injuries, has not been able to do that. And by all accounts, he was a good teammate in the locker room, except when he threw his quarterback under the bus. I'm not sure why that people aren't more upset about that on the team. But like, it doesn't mean he's a bad guy. It just means that when it comes to fantasy and quite frankly, real life, I don't think he has what it takes to be a consistent one. You'll have those flashes, I'm sure. But any consistent basis, Josh, I don't see it because we have not seen it in multiple years, almost a half decade. You haven't seen it. So you're going to have to prove, he's going to have to prove it. Could he do it? I suppose. Will he? I don't think so.
Let's hit on tonight's game before we get to any more news, because the news just came out a few minutes ago. Jacoby Brissett will start tonight. No Tua Tagovailoa again. So I feel like this is a game tonight, before we get to any other news, Andy, that if you have Ravens players, play them. If you have Dolphins players, sit them, trade them, release them, send them to the IR.
Yeah. And the thing was, hopefully, the listeners for your fantasy team, you were anticipating this. Likely the only guys you have are either Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, or probably Myles Gaskin, who I dropped a while ago. I'm done with Gaskin. Don't get me started on that again, Josh. But the Waddle standpoint, look, depending on who you have on bye, right? You got some good teams on bye this week. Who do we got? We got the Bears. Well, it's not very good. The Bengals, lots. Giants, decent. Texans, and not so good. So maybe it's not that much of a loss. But if you have to start, need a flex, if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, like I still think, like under Jacoby Brissett, Waddle did still get around 18 fantasy points in PPR. So there's a spot for him. And because tight end is so thin, who are you going to get at this point off of waivers that has better potential than Gesicki? So maybe, but I'm with you 100%. If you have other options, avoid it. Absolutely. And for the Ravens, you know what? For the first time in a long time, Josh, I'm coming around on a Ravens running back for now. Might just be for this week. Devonta Freeman, last couple, dude's been pretty good. Getting the football, gotten you mid to high teen fantasy points. I picked him up last week and put him in. So that's a good play. And otherwise, it's, the usual suspects for Baltimore.
All right, so this is the other piece of news out there. The Panthers have signed Cam Newton, but they're starting PJ Walker this week, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Cam Newton, he's not going to know Joe Brady's offense in 2-3 days. That'd be silly. But apparently he's going to be the backup. So if the idea is that Newton could be the starter starting next week, if you're somebody who doesn't have one of the Big Ten in fantasy football, do you throw a waiver, just flag out there and say, hope for the best with Cam Newton? Or are you saying, wait and see?
Get the fishing pole in, seeing if there's a nibble. Yeah, I would say this. It never hurts if it's not going to hurt your fantasy team. So by that, I mean, if you have a guy on your bench that you haven't played, you're not going to play, you've been holding, you've been waiting, and you can get Cam Newton, then pick him up. But if it's going to be somebody that you feel is going to have value to you to help in a bye week or a nice handcuff pinch or something, then no. Cam, like this has written all over to me that Cam Newton comes in, has a great first game, and then injures something. And why do I say that? Because that's what has happened the last bunch of years, right? Like he has we know he has the tools. We know he has the tools to be a force, but he only has those tools if he's running, Josh. And I've always respected his arm. I thought when he was in his prime, he had a good arm. That arm has looked like garbage. Like it is shot putting it. It is shot putting it even when he was with the Pats last year too. The arm isn't there. So for a short-term burst, yeah, like there might be some value, but don't put any significant fab behind it. Don't put any significant waiver priority behind it. More of a nice a wait and see approach. But if you can get him on your team, then you can do it.
Andy McNamara joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN Sportsnet, fantasy football NFL analyst. Follow him on Twitter at AndyMC81. All right, so we'll run down some of the guys who are on the injury report or we have questions about heading in this week. I got to start at wide receiver. Julio Jones is on the injury report again. Is he turning into a guy that people just need to bail on? Because I feel like ever since he left Atlanta and went to Tennessee, he has been on the top 5 of most disappointing players this year.
Yeah, you know what? If we're putting together a list of that, I think that is very fair, Josh. I do, because if he was healthy, the idea was, all right, double team AJ Brown, things open up for Julio, Derrick Henry in the back, and boom. Well, we know Derrick Henry's gone, and Julio has not been able to stay healthy. Now, this has been an ongoing theme, but in the past, when he was younger, he'd always had that Q beside his name with that ankle or calf or something, but he'd always come out and he'd ball out anyway. Well, clearly we're seeing Julio on the back nine, and maybe it's on hole 18 right now, where he's just not the same guy. And the best ability is availability in real life and in fantasy. I would personally, because it's a wide receiver group, if it was a similar situation, maybe for running back or tight end, I might say, hold on. You can still find quality wide receivers that can get you as far as performance-wise and resume-wise for this season, better results than Julio Jones. So, yeah, Josh, I'd say if you want to hit the waiver wire and see if you can pick up somebody a little better. Now, Hunter Renfro's ownership has gone up a bunch. I love him. Even like a Donovan Peoples-Jones for the Browns with Odell gone, he really popped last week. And if they have to throw the football more, he's going to be a lead target. So, yeah, I would feel comfortable, as nuts as it sounds, to say Julio Jones, if I have a better choice, I'm okay letting him go.
A couple of the wide receivers I want to ask you about here. I'm just going to lump them together because they're kind of in the same category to me. Both Jarvis Landry and T.Y. Hilton returned to practice today. And I put them in the same category because for me, Andy, they're both guys who can really boom, but sometimes they give you 8 points in fantasy. So, what are you looking at with Landry and Hilton right now?
Hilton, I'm not interested in. I haven't been interested in T.Y. Hilton for 2 years, this year and last year. Guy had a non-touchdown stretch for over a calendar year before he got a couple at the end of last season. T.Y. Hilton is an exciting player, but he is super boomer bust, where if he's in there, one, he can't stay healthy, so you can't rely on him on your team, which is number one. Two, he could go dark and then have that one big boom game. I would much rather, if I'm the Colts, keep feeding and growing Michael Pittman, who has turned into the WR1 we were all hoping for and expecting going into from last year as a rookie. Keep feeding him. T.Y. can just be a decoy for now. Now, Jarvis Landry, to me, a little bit of a different animal because when healthy in PPR only, standard, we're not touching him. Even half PPR is a bit of a stretch. In PPR only, Jarvis can be a really nice flex. I think he's out of the WR2 conversation for sure. WR3 may be in the middle. But he can be that when healthy. Now, for Jarvis, the problem has been he's had knee injuries, shoulder stuff. He had the worst. His last 2 games have been some of the worst of his career. And I just hate in the NFL when you have players who are like, I'm tough. I'm a football guy. Okay, but you're hurting your team. And more importantly, you're hurting our fantasy team, Jarvis. And so, if you can't play, then I don't care if you're tough and you're physically out there. You're not helping your team, and you're fumbling the ball, and you're turning it over, and you're dropping passes. So I wouldn't be touching Jarvis Landry right now. If he can get himself right, we don't really know the severity of those injuries. If they can be fixed in season and go, I think he still has value. So if I had to keep one, I'd say you keep Jarvis and sort of wait it out. T.Y. Hilton, I think you can flush him down.
Couple other players to keep an eye on here. Chris Godwin did not participate for the Bucs at practice today, which is interesting because I feel like he's a guy that a lot of people were snatching and hoping for at different points because other guys had gotten injured. For example, Curtis Samuel, for example. I know a lot of people were hoping a lot from him. So, what do you do if you're a Godwin owner? And also, think about it with the Bucs offense. How much value does he really have moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have Chris Godwin on one of my teams, so I'm tracking this. I think number one, you got to track this up until Sunday, really, and just sort of get the feel. Is he going to be in, but very limited? Has it been cleared? I think Friday's practice is going to tell us a lot if he doesn't practice, and then it's going to be the Mike Evans season right there. So Godwin with the overall trio, when they're all on the field, of Evans, of Gronk, of Antonio Brown, of him, he has certainly dipped from where he was a year ago. Still a usable piece, certainly not a WR1 anymore. I feel he can still be a good second wide receiver on your fantasy team. It's just going to be a little more volatile than we've been used to or want out of that position because he can still go deep. He can still push. So he's not someone that you want to give up on, but it's certainly a case where as you're approaching the fantasy trade deadline, you want to make sure that if you were relying on him as like your top guy, you want to make some provisions there because he's not that anymore.
Andy McNamara from Sportsnet joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at AndyMC81 on Twitter. Andy just hit on some running backs. Antonio Gibson, I think he's also in that category, disappointing this year.
Yeah.
In part because of injury, but in part also because I don't know what the heck is going on in Washington. I really don't. Like, every time I watch their offense, I don't even know what they're calling. So if you are an Antonio Gibson owner, what is your advice for them?
This injury for Gibson is just, it sucks because the guy's a damn good player. And I think he's going to be a great player in the league moving forward. Trouble is, it's a shin. It's what they call like the hairline fracture or something. Like it's bad, but it's not bad enough for him to miss time. So what does that mean for your fantasy team? It means he's not going to be good enough to give you the production you were hoping for. Think about the shin, Josh, and a hairline fracture for a guy who that's where defenders are instructed to hit you below the knee or below the weight, in that area, grabbing, nipping. You got to push off that. You got to pivot. The pain must be excruciating for the man. So I feel with Antonio Gibson, he could still have some games where he pops and where running backs are at a premium. I wouldn't advise getting rid of him, but I would certainly try to keep him on the bench for now. It is very disappointing. I guess the good news is you can't really blame him, but you're right. In Washington, what are we looking at for the future? You got a stud potential defense that hasn't been as good as it should be, probably because they get worn down too much. Taylor Heineke, that fun flash at the beginning, that's gone. He's proven why he's a journeyman. Ryan Fitzpatrick, all right, I think we know what he is. What are they going to do for quarterback in a draft class that, as of right now, I don't know about you, Josh, but I'm looking at the quarterbacks coming out of the draft, and there's always a surprise guy comes a bit later. Right now, I'm not super excited about really anybody out of that draft class. What do you do if you're Washington? That's the question moving forward.
Well, I said this earlier before you came on because I was talking about the fact that, a bunch of GMs are at the Pitt, North Carolina game tonight to watch Pickett and Howell. And I was saying earlier, to me, both of them are, Pickett is like a, Joe Burrow light. He's like a lesser version of Joe Burrow. And Sam Howell is Sam Darnold to me because, remember when Darnold lost all those guys who graduated, he regressed. Now look at Howell. Half the team left last year. He regressed.
Yeah.
So to me, the only guys in this draft who are quote unquote special on any level are Matt Corral and Malik Willis. And let's be realistic, Matt Corral is basically his potential is to be a slightly better version of Baker Mayfield. And Malik Willis is probably some amalgamation of Donovan McNabb and Deshaun Watson. So you're taking the best and worst of both those guys and putting them together. So I don't really know if either one of those guys are game changers. Maybe they are for Washington because Washington's quarterbacks have been for the last decade since RG3 blew up his knee again.
You're right. You're right. And Fitzpatrick was always going to be a Band-Aid anyway, right? That was, but I never quite understood. I'm like, okay, but you're not bringing anybody else along. Like, did they really believe Taylor Heineke was going to be the guy long-term? Like, I thought it was a fun little story and I liked what I saw earlier in the year. Like, but I don't know, like, and not being a football front office executive myself, I didn't think there was anything that was really pointing to, oh, yeah, that's the franchise guy all of a sudden.
But Andy, really quick, this gets back to the whole thing with Ron Rivera. People complain about him in Carolina because the idea was, well, you had Cam Newton. And Cam Newton saved you a lot of times.
Yeah.
He didn't have a great record down there. So he goes to Washington to save the culture, right? He brings in Jack Del Rio, who's always better in year one than year two as a D coordinator.
Yeah.
And he brought in the son of Norv Turner. That's all you need to know about the offensive coordinator. So to me, it's like, Washington's in a very, very weird situation.
You're right. They're right. They're in that dreaded kind of purgatory, right? They're not good enough to get a top draft pick or bad enough to get a top draft pick. They're not good enough to be anything exciting. Like this team is screaming just sub 500, right around that 500 mark and really meaning nothing. And I feel at the end of the year, we're going to look at Washington and just be like, okay, I guess they need a quarterback, but where are you going to get one?
Yeah. I mean, listen, Washington could probably find somebody because let's be realistic. Anybody right now is probably better than Taylor Heineke and Ryan
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick, honestly. But for a lot of teams, I think there's got to be a lot of questions going into this draft about, are you okay with getting a basically a Kirk Cousins? Like,
That's it. Yep.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No. I was going to say to your point, I'm so in agreement with you as far as we know people reach for quarterbacks. They do it all the time. But once in a while, you get a draft class that isn't that good. And again, could someone pop up? Yeah, man. Like Carson Wentz and Josh Allen were super risers. And, look, that's turned out pretty good for those guys. So it still could happen. But right now, you're getting guys who are they going to be transformative players? You're going to get a day one guy who can come in and really change it. Now, maybe with Washington, they feel, look, we just need a skill upgrade because we have the defense, because we have pieces. So maybe that's the mind, and maybe that will work. But it still has to be the right prospect and the right fit, and that's going to be the challenge for them.
For more fantasy football analysis, advice, and of course, NFL analysis, go check out Andy McNamara at AndyMC81, Sportsnet Fantasy Sports Analyst, NFL Analyst. And then Andy, the show is Saturday mornings on Sportsnet. Sunday mornings, correct?
Sunday mornings, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. You can stream us live online and all that, answer all your questions. But on Twitter all the time, just use hashtag AskAndy, and I'll always answer your questions before kickoff.
There you go. Andy McNamara at AndyMC81. My friend, great conversation today.
All right, absolutely. Josh, talk to you soon.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to your guys' thoughts and comments on the other side, on the text board, on the mobile app, and at 973 ESPN on YouTube and Twitter as we get you ready for Sixers basketball tonight. I will let you know the latest news on the Sixers as they play at 7 p.m. tonight on the other side.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. It's week 10 of the 2021 season with the Eagles headed to Denver to face the Broncos.
And it's Josh Sweat, and he's wiping the sweat from his brow.
Pre-game coverage begins this Sunday at 3 p.m. Maryland Mike call all the action at 4:05. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
Kindle Auto Plaza has the area's largest selection of pre-owned vehicles of all makes and models, with over 170 pre-owned vehicles on their huge 100-acre lot. Everything from sporty coupes to SUVs to trucks. Kindle offers the area's best buying experience, easy and hassle-free, with 60 years of customer satisfaction and community service. Discover why Kindle customers are so loyal. Shop for your next pre-owned vehicle at Kindle Auto Plaza, exit 10 of the Parkway, Stone Harbor Boulevard, or online at KindleAutoplaza.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Game Night on 97.3 ESPN being brought to you by my friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. It's time to experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get in on all the games you love at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Dallas Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City, right off the boardwalk. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet with FanDuel Sportsbook. Only at Bally's in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Couple messages I want to get in here before we get out of here. But first, Sixers starting lineup is good news. Tobias Harris, Seth Curry are back in the lineup. Your starters tonight: Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Andre Drummond, Seth Curry, Tyrese Maxey. So some upgrades. Listen, the Sixers played really hard, and I think that Doc Rivers has to be an early candidate for Coach of the Year, but you want some of your starters back, even if it's not Embiid out there. So good news on the Sixers front. A couple texts that came in I want to get to before we get out of here. Texas chimes in at 609-403-0973, says the Eagles' first 3 picks in April should be a cornerback, safety, and either defensive end or linebacker. Might be able to get a 3-down linebacker in the second or third round, but it's Stingley's on the board. When the Eagles are picking, he's the guy. Couple things. One, I think the Eagles are not going to be so dense to not go and get help when it comes to the defense. To me, the guy you have to get no matter what is Kayvon Thibodeau. The dude's a game wrecker. He's a freak. He's special. If that guy's on the board, I don't care if Derek Stingley's on the board. I'm getting Thibodeau. Stingley's a good player. I don't think he's a great player. You know, when LSU won their national championship, it's not like he was a game breaker, game in and game out. Last year, when LSU's defense was horrible, he didn't really help make them better. When Thibodeau's on the field, teams fear him. I want a guy on my defense that people fear. I think Fletcher Cox is starting to be on the downward trend of his career. So is Brandon Graham. You got to have somebody replace those kind of guys. To me, Thibodeau is the guy. If you walk out there with Thibodeau and Stingley, I'm cool with that. I think Stingley could be a very, very good safety at the NFL level. I don't know how good of a corner he's going to be at the NFL level. I feel like he's a little, I don't know if he has the pure juice as an athlete to be a corner full-time in the NFL, but I could totally see him being an elite safety potentially. Another message coming in says the Washington football team make an offer for Jordan Love. No. When I said they should get almost anybody, I didn't mean Jordan Love. But then again, I've always been out on Jordan Love. Listen, you lead college football Division I in interceptions, and you get drafted in the first round. You better be counting your money and thanking God, because anybody else should not get that opportunity he's getting. One more message came in on the YouTube channel at 973 ESPN. Says the Eagles coaching staff has to all go besides the special teams coordinator. He's the only good thing we have going. Here's the problem, Anthony. The owner hired these coaches, not Howie Roseman. The owner. The owner wants Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon. Guess what? So further notice, you're stuck with it. Sixers basketball next, followed by Thursday football here at 973 ESPN FM. Have a great night, everybody.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action.
The Flyers are in Carolina to face the Hurricanes.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN, and listen live on the free mobile app.